midrash, and there are midrashic collections, or the Mishnah or the Gemara, but basically those rabbis discussing texts. And then you have, from 500 to 1,000, a different set of rabbis called the Gaonim, and they wrote their books. Much of the commentary between 1,000 and say 1,600, you've got the medieval luminaries that people have heard their names but don't know that much about them, like Rashi and Ibn Ezra and Rashbam and Ramban, and those commentaries, and then you have modern ones. The books exist. I tried to give you 5 books, but that's where people work together if it can help. But so it says, right? Cain said to his brother Abel, and when they were in the field, Cain set upon his brother Abel and killed him. Well, what did Cain say to his brother Abel? It must have been something, because they killed each other afterwards. But a microscope approach would be just to concentrate on that. And to first ask yourself what it did, and then there are commentaries on the page here that give ideas, and on the page in these other books as well. You create a conversation between the centuries, and then you add other people to it. Right? The airplane, that's, this Torah portion is about the tabernacle. Let me talk about synagogue architecture. Right? We're gonna take it a different direction. Or the diving board is a similar approach. Snuff box is not there, right? The biblical personality, I'm going to analyze one character here and try to understand them. Or, the puzzle, ask a question, right? But these are, just different approaches. So once you're reading a text, what to say, well, what's my question? What do I want people to discuss? I mean, what are discussions about in general, right? They're answering questions. I'm seeing a lot of strange looks for a second.
I just wanted to ask you more a kind of technical or logistical question. Let's say that I'm leading a discussion on one of the texts and you're giving a sermon on that. But I don't know what you're going to say or what point you're making. And I may be making the same point, maybe, perhaps, and then my group then hears you expand on it, kind of, either that's good or they think, oh, Judy didn't go very far with this, or whatever. In other words,
you were working together. You were collaborating.
Well, the problem there is that
Judy
Judy probably would plan her stuff out a couple weeks ahead of time, and I'm writing the sermon on Thursday afternoon.
Is it important? Would it be important that we would know what you're going to say or what Jonathan was going to say, so we would take another question, maybe then 1 year?
So I would say no. I mean, I would say if it was important to you, you could always ask, because we always have an idea. Or more likely, it would be the opposite way, because you've been thinking about it for longer, and you say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do." But I don't think that it's an issue for several reasons. First of all, right, the nature of plagiarism is that two people don't ask the same question and come up with identical interpretations ever, unless they're cheating from each other, right? Secondly. Right, so I've done it differently. So let's say I'm leading the Torah discussion and I'm giving this sermon, and they're on the same topic. I've done that before.
Yeah.
But the nature of the study group for an hour and the give and take is a different exercise, and it takes you in a different place. Whereas I may talk about a certain text and we have a give and take, and then I've picked one particular strand to give a sermon about it. But it doesn't matter. And then the third piece is, right, so we read the full Torah reading every week. Does that mean, and there's no answer to that, right? Does that mean that people expect that any tidbit of Torah is going to be on a different topic throughout the time? Or is it okay to say, well, right, Vayera, and it's talking about the Akedah, it's talking about other stuff also, that everybody wants to talk about the Akedah. Does that mean that there's not room for two interpretations? I understand why you're asking the question, and I guess this whole thing is like to say, no, I think that what would happen there is that you would ask a question, and at most, right, somebody would say, oh, we talked about this before, Judy had a different take. Well, okay, I'm interested to hear it. I'm interested if you didn't discuss it before and I gave a sermon and you came up afterwards and said I had a different take, right? Because we're all interpreting the same text. The whole thing is to engage in that discussion. And I think that sort of what's missing, and particularly in the conservative and reform movement, well, forget the right word. What's missing in Jewish life today is that people don't feel that, or people are afraid to give their own opinion. People really feel incompetent. And that's both the Torah study and also with prayer. And, there's lots of reasons why people don't come to synagogue, but one of them is, 5 days a week I go to work and I'm the smartest guy in the room and I don't understand this stuff. Why would I want to feel incompetent? And I really feel like this is going to be the empowerment generation, and part of our responsibility is to convince people that no, you have a lot to give to it. There's another, oh yes, I did bring it. So let me help you. Where does all this stuff come from? This is a great resource, this Harvey Fields, a Torah commentary for our times. And it's a great resource for the kind of thing that we're doing, because for every Torah portion, he gives a summary. But then what he does is he calls it our Targum. Targum means translation, but the Targum is the Aramaic translation that's found in traditional rabbinic Bibles. And so his Targum, his commentary, will ask a question. His Targum is, I'm going to give a series of tidbits of information, of ideas, right? And then I'm going to, I think that the most exciting part to me is I'm going to discuss themes. For some portions there's 2 themes, for some portions there's 3, right? But what are the themes here? Okay, first one, can we decipher the meaning of the Shema? And he'll ask the question, and then he'll quote some rabbis. Here's what Hertz said about it. Here's what Rashi said about it. And so he's doing the work that I think that we can sometimes do by ourselves, but if you don't feel comfortable about it, he's already engaged in a conversation of 4 people. And that's kind of a very exciting way to do it. And it's written on an incredibly,
It's each book, because I remember having...
yeah, there's 3 volumes. This one, I think it's 3. This one's Numbers and Deuteronomy, and I think there's Genesis.
Because I
This is
remember
all
all my kids...
right?
This is in the library,
I
yeah.
have a set if you want to borrow from them there.
Yeah. And are you so you're familiar with it? I think it's a shame they put this cover to make it look like it's a kid's book, but it's really not.
It's excellent.
It's a great
resource.
it's a great text.
All my kids had the same parsha, so I got the one volume. Ours was like a reddish...
So is it during the summer months, so at least we can get you while you're here?
No, it was Psalm.
Before
Pesach.
I should arrange that.
I think that, if, one thing I thought, I thought Zohar was, a different book from Torah. And I guess there are some different stories in it, but it,
Zohar is a commentary on Torah, 13th century.
Yeah.
So it's just another commentary.
Yeah, exactly. And but the thing that really, I think would help you, I think that you should have classes on Zohar, really, and you should
That's a different story, right?
It's
We've confused a lot of our people when we've tried, but yeah.
It's more heroic, it's more like you're playing the video game, you're the hero. Rather than Torah, it's like, these are the stories, this is what happened, it's like the movie. Where I feel like this generation, they want to feel like they're in the game, but they're not, you don't want to be, I don't know, I think Zohar is for now.
Another class. So in terms of doing it, so you're asking the question, you're coming with some answers. That's where these different commentaries help, and I'll go over them all again in a different section. And then in terms of the discussion plan, I think that the hardest part, I'm not an expert at it, but I think that the hardest part in leading a discussion is getting people to talk. Starting off with a question, we try, it doesn't always work, but try to force people to say more than just their name, right? First of all, it's easier to remember somebody's name if you know something about them, right? But to try to have a leading question. I could have come in today and said, well, what's the hardest thing about Torah, right, or something, and let people put it out. But anyway, that works. In terms of doing it, a short summary of the portion. I had a teacher who said, this is more for speeches, but tell people what you're going to say it, and then hit them over the head and say, this is what I just told you. You're a little more creative in the way you do it, but that's your point. Right? Tell people what you're going to focus on and where you're going to get. Pick a text to read aloud. I think that works. Right? Ask a question, offer preliminary ideas, discuss. I don't know. So, recipe books, I say 2 tablespoons and milk a little bit of that too. Let me just show you some of these books that are available in our library, and there are more of them. But I've shown the Gunther Plout is kind of cool because there's 2 versions. There's the red version, which opens left to right, and there's the blue version, which opens right to left.
And synagogues would vote.
Right, exactly. That's what you fight about in the Reform. It's bareheaded worship and whether the book should open left to right. It's actually interesting. The book is less interested in sort of parsha discussions or parsha divisions. It's more sort of themes. Probably because in most Reform synagogues you're reading the 21 or 28 verses of Torah, and so it doesn't say Parshat Bo do the whole thing. We've got a section of a piece from Parshat Bo 12:43 to 13:16.
That's a short one to begin with.
Right, well, exactly. I don't want to say it in that. But he's got an essay here on the historical Passover. At the end of each parsha, he does what's called gleanings, where he has a couple of midrashic pieces. I rarely use the stone chumash, but a lot of people like it, so I don't want to ignore it. And I want to say what it's good for and what it's not. It is good for. There isn't really, except for the other art scroll pieces of the series, there aren't really a lot of texts where you have access to 18th century rabbis, just that wealth of traditional Jewish texts. The downside, as long as you understand what it is when you're doing it, is it is very selective. It is, telling a certain story, a very conservative with a small c approach to what religion means, to what Bible means, and so that's kind of there. But if you want, and especially if you've kind of come up with a question and read some other commentaries and want to see if traditional commentaries, what they're saying, it's useful to use a text like this.
Mickey, this
Yes.
is a little off topic.
Mhm.
What chumash does Magen David use?
I have a feeling they use stone because they're so big on being an Orthodox synagogue, even though people aren't, but I don't know.
Yeah.
They do use stone.
I don't know.
I do.
They do use stone?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mickey's saying about all these 19th century Polish rabbis. Well,
Yeah, well, there's not so much Sephardic.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's an issue that Sephardim have in general.
Right.
The rabbi there is half Ashkenazi and half Sephardic.
Oh,
He
Well, and that's why
goes
you go like
either- he
Shas
goes
in Israel,
either
they're
way.
wearing the Polish dress, you want to fit in, but they're all Sephardim. I really like Eitz Chaim. And that's a book that we're all familiar with, but it really does have good ideas and good discussion pieces. And in particular, so there's 3 commentaries. There's the piece above the line, which is just okay. It's a shortened version, and if you're interested in scholarly commentary, we have the 5-volume set, Genesis and Exodus by Nahum Sarno, Leviticus by Baruch Levine, Numbers by Jacob Milgram, and Deuteronomy by Jeff Teague. A small piece of that is on here. The Halacha L'Maaseh piece in the shaded, so I'm telling you what I don't like first, right? There are these shaded pieces that say, relate these Torah texts to Jewish law today. I find those to be fairly weak in most cases. The part below the line, I find to be an incredibly great commentary. It's edited by Harold Kushner, who knew a knows something about homiletics. And he asks good questions and uses a nice piece, and that's for like, right, why, well again, right, so we said, why does it say kol hadvarim instead of, that's not a good example. Well, let me just look up Genesis 37. I just want to see what it says about that man, and hopefully I'll be able to make my point with being wrong. Okay. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He answered, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they're pasturing?" The man said, they have gone from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dotan.' So Joseph followed his brothers and found them at Dotan. And then all the bad things happened. So, a man, above the line. The exchange between Joseph and the man is reported only in briefest outline. The stranger surely must have asked for the identity of the brothers, if only to be of help. Okay, I'm not sure what that gets, but okay, there was more to the conversation. Below the line. Maimonides takes this stranger to be an angel, sent to make sure that Joseph would not give up on his mission when he could not find his brothers immediately. A modern scholar has noted that Dotan was a city, not a place of pasture. Perhaps Joseph discovered that his brothers were neglecting the sheep to explore the pleasures of the city, and it was to hide this embarrassing disclosure, as well as for reasons of jealousy, that they were moved to get rid of him. We never hear of this man again, yet if Joseph had not met him, he never would have found his brothers. He never would have been sold into slavery. The family would not have followed him into Egypt. There would have been no exodus. The history of the world would have been so different. Could that man have known how his chance encounter changed history? Do we ever know the consequences of the little acts of thoughtfulness we perform? Should we just see? A man discovered, okay. Ish, a man. This man was the angel Gabriel in the likeness of a man, Targum Yonasan, whom God sent to lead Joseph to his brothers to fulfill the prophecy to Abraham, Ramban. When Joseph could not find his brothers, he had a perfect excuse to return to Jacob and avoid what he knew would be an unpleasant meeting. Instead, he displayed great loyalty to Jacob by searching for them persistently, Rashba. But now it's asking another question, right? All of history chose because what if Joseph would have
Right.
I couldn't find him. Okay, why was he? And right, you can look at that and say, what is with Joseph, right? He goes and brags about the coat. He's always looking for trouble, right? So they're already answering the question and say, no, he loved his father so much that he had to do it. But whose personality do you focus on in that story?
None of them.
I think the personality of Joseph is the main thing. He was always doing strange things. He was always, so that's the main story. I don't know.
Well, but if you
other
look at these
thing.
medieval commentaries, they'd say no, but he loved his father so much. And they have, and the traditional commentaries have a hard time, right? They call it Joseph as Yosef HaTzadik. They have a hard time doing that. I agree with you though, right? And right, you do the same thing with Jacob and Esau, right? Was Jacob all great?
He's probably, there's nobody else who's called Sadiq, is there? In the whole Tanakh, I think he's probably the only one.
Could
So that says something.
This Mikra Okidolot, Commentator's Bible, they're $75 a volume, or maybe you can get it for $65 on Amazon. So they're a little expensive, but we do have them in there. So traditionally, Mikra Okid, but they're beautiful. Traditionally, Mikra Okidolot is a rabbinic Bible that will have the text of the Torah in the middle, and it will have commentary around the outside. Michael Karasik at University of Pennsylvania has only done 4 volumes so far. He's done Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, but it's in English. And it's really great because you talk about people doing in context, but if you wanted to use this book, you would read the JPS translation. They put the new JPS and the old JPS. But then he's got Rashi, Nachmanides, Rashbam, Ibn Ezra on the side, and additional comments from other people. So he doesn't have all of Abravanel, but he'll say something about him every once in a while. And you can often engage in conversation this way if you wanted to do what did the medieval rabbis say about things.
What I'm saying is that it's about Inanna, and the whole thing about the father is that he's talking about Mosnaim, like Father Moses, Mosnaim, the scales.
Oh, right.
And I think that there's too much of this the sound, the Mos. It's like mass, it's like a lot of, like it's too much.
Mhm.
Yeah, the actual word for scale, or at least in this time period, is actually an anayim. And that's actually one of the first, it's on the first page of Torah, or if you have the scroll, it's like the first view you have. It says inanna, just straight down, like yod, nun, final nun,
Yanan?
aleph.
I have to look.
And it's a sanctified name, you know, just coming from like Shekinah. And I think one of the funnest things about Torah is finding those names and seeing how it's like showing you peace. Like there's actually peace between all these cultures. It's not really saying destroy another culture,
Right.
just for having another name.
But again, that's where you
Saying,
start with the text and
learn
you
these
come
names,
right.
learn it, and see kind of the magic, you know, moving in the water, whatever. It's beautiful.
Just a couple more things on here. Arthur Green's, if you want access to sort of Hasidic interpretation, he does some nice pieces there. Hasidic interpretation tends to go far apace. So you think you're talking about the Mishkan, and he tells you how you're really talking about your heart. But that works sometimes if that's what you want to do. And if you want any of that, this is the most accessible sort of English version of that. Right? That's with the 7 interpretations here, we call the diving board approach, right? Start somewhere. The JTS and AJU commentaries, which you can get in your email box, are also, all the archives are online, very, very accessible. This book, in terms of the methodological stuff, Barry holds us back to the sources. Some of you might be familiar with it, but that's like a 10,000-foot approach. So you'll have, like, he has a chapter on Bible scholarship, he's got a chapter on Midrash, he's got a chapter on the Talmud, he's got a chapter on medieval commentaries, a chapter on Jewish philosophy, and a chapter on mysticism. If you're interested in sort of understanding more that way. And then this, Richard Israel, I already gave you that article, and this Stephen Mackenzie, this To Each Its Own Meaning. So that's a non-Jewish approach, but we got it at the seminary, so I guess it's conservative. But he's got a chapter on source criticism, canonical criticism, historical criticism, whatever, the different things. So people who like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Add 2 resources.
Yeah, please.
The conservative yeshiva in Jerusalem.
Yes,
Also
they
has
do.
Torah
Just this year they really
commentaries, just
started
this
that.
year. Yeah, and they said if you get on their email list.
Do you hear that? Conservative yeshiva.
Right. And then there's also a book of biblical commentary by Adele Berlin and Mark Breitler, is it? Or
Oh, Brettler?
Breitler, which is, yeah.
Oh, and I don't even have that. Okay, well, they're great scholars, so I'm sure their
Yes,
book is
yes.
fantastic. Since we're doing that,
Fantastic, but
it's good.
It's good.
I'll add another one also, because it's also, I have a lot of other books, and a lot of the stuff you look on the shelf, I was really, it's like you give people too much and you confuse them. But Reuven Hammer, who's been here for Scholar in Residence, I think twice, has a book called Entering Torah, which also has great, again, very accessible, simple stuff.
Does anyone happen to have like a pen or a pencil that I can, like,
You want some paper?
I've got paper.
Okay.
So, what do we think?
I think the biggest, well, I see 2 problems. One, we don't have enough people to sustain this project.
Well, there's a lot of people who said they're interested, so who aren't here, so.
Okay.
And you're hoping they'll be watching.
I'm hoping that, well, first of all, you don't have to attend this session to be able to do a text. The question of whether we can sustain it, and it's a double question on whether we can find enough teachers, which I think categorically the answer is yes, and whether we can sustain the interest on students, which I think is a little bit of a bigger question mark.
What do you
Well, when-
usually have on a
When
typical?
you
We've
do
done
it.
it with
Right.
3,
We've had as
and
many
we've
as
had as
18
many
or
as
20.
25, yeah. I mean, but it varies, and it's not only a question of who's leading it, it's also a question of, there's all kinds of issues of, right now, this is what I'm banking on, and I don't know whether it would work, but right now, the group who comes is fairly predictable. So the crowd sort of depends, you know, if Judy Sachs has a family commitment that week, she doesn't come. Well, she's a regular, so that's one less person that week, right? I'm trying to bank on, people have been asking me for A, every week, and B, you know, a rabbi teaching is a double-edged sword. I monopolize the conversation. I've researched this a lot more than anybody else sitting in the room. There's more room, and there are people who say they want to have more discussion and more give and take. I mean, I don't like
You know,
go in saying I want to monopolize the conversation, but okay.
But do people come in already having read the parsha?
Some have.
Yeah.
I think with adult education,
The odds,
some
I
rates
think the
go.
odds might be against it, but I think you must try. You know,
Look,
when
if
I
it
say
doesn't
the
work, we're
odds,
just back to the same thing
Yeah.
we were at before.
when I say the odds, I'm thinking of when we had the Minyan Ma'at.
Right.
It went strong, and then it sort of lost interest, and there just wasn't enough of a core of people to
Well, I mean,
sustain
Yama
it.
is an example too, because there's a reason why people wanted to have lay
They wanted to
stuff.
partake in.
You want to partake, you want different flavor, you want to do it all.
Yeah.
All that's totally fine. And then at a certain point, they also started to realize it's not that easy to put together every time. And
Very
and,
difficult.
And,
Yeah.
you know, and so.
I know it added
I-
Israel succeeds, and I don't know the difference why.
Yeah,
I don't have the.
it's a little bit of a different way of a cultural thing, and
And look, we had
off
a hard
camera
time
maybe a
getting
different discussion,
people
but
also to do a full kriya of the, you know, like Addis, they do the triennial, so that's a lot less.
but their traditional egalitarian minion
Does the full?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, and that's part of the thing that's different in Addis is that the different minyanim are more different than each other. That there's, but that I think in general, and I'm supposed to be thinking about the next 20 years of Judaism because of this position I'm going to assume. I think in general, the trend is towards empowerment, that people feel that they can do things. It's not do it yourself was a 1970s thing in Michael Strassfeld and whatever, but that I don't need you to tell me how to interpret the text. I don't need you to tell me how to celebrate the holiday. Now the piece that the jury is still out is sort of on two cases. One is it's not clear whether I don't need you means I don't need you because I want to do it my way, or I don't need you, period. Right? The second is it's unclear whether if people do really feel empowered, whether they still need the central institutions. And that's a question. But so the question is, can we sort of harness some of the energy? And I know that people are reading the text because I'll go to Kiddush and people will ask questions that they were thinking, you know, can we harness the energy and convince people, you know, to do it? I've heard that not everybody likes to pay attention for all 3 hours of the service. Is 9 o'clock the best hour? Is 10 o'clock the best hour? You know, that's all a question too.
Should it be on Saturday?
Well, so for now, you know, in the Reform movement, they have this very strong. Nobody goes to shul on Saturday. Not nobody, right? But in the Reform movement, but these Reform synagogues have these traditions of Saturday morning Torah study. I'm told that like at Beth Ami, people come from 9 to 10 or 9 to whatever time it's at, and then they go home. And, you know, that became their Torah study, which, you know, I think I've said this to you guys before, right? Some people feel embarrassed when they do that. My take is, lots of people come from 11 to 12, and they stay till Kiddush, and somehow they think that because they were there when you said Adon Olam, you've done your obligation. Why should you be embarrassed if you come from 9 to 10 and then you leave?
Wendy Ravish quoted you this.
I know, I've said that to her many times, but it's true. I mean, you know, why should we get upset when people come early and seem to think that it's totally fair for people or people leave early and seem it's totally fair that people come late?
It's all good.
That's exactly my point.
I'm very optimistic about it. I wanna do this. I wanna go. I wanna lead classes. I think.
All right.
But
Well, there will be.
I think it should not be on Saturday. That's my iffy thing.
Well, we'll see where it goes. It's the reason it's on Saturday right now is because it's A, that tradition, and B, because it's built on the class that we already have. But I will circulate. Actually, Lori's going to do it. But I'm going to give her Lori Lipton. I'm going to give her the dates. Jonathan's back in the office on Thursday. He and I will pick the first ones, and then give her some dates. Moshe Ben Leah. Well, I'm doing one on September 10th, but we're not starting to everybody do it until October 26th or 29th, whatever the date of Breshit is.
Right.
So, no, listen. If there are things that you think are missing from the workshop, things we didn't focus on, you know, happy to hear from you now or later.
Holidays.
Holidays
in Torah.
Yeah. There are holidays is that how you interpret for holidays in other pieces. So.
I think that one of the bigger challenges for me personally is picking the theme, because I do tend to like themes that really do have applications to modern life, as opposed to just sort of looking at something, you know, more esoteric, really. And I think that's often hard to really pull out what people would really want to get engaged in and talk about and debate sort of over that table in the library. So I'm not sure, and Harvey Field certainly, I think he does manage to do that pretty successfully.
Well, that's definitely a place to start.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that to a certain extent, you know, don't leave in Tazria.
That should be a rabbinic class. Let's vote on that, he gets that.
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, exactly, so there is some of that. You know, like these laws in Deuteronomy, these things in Deuteronomy, you know, so if you have a Torah portion that presents 50 different laws, well, there's got to be 2 or 3 that you think relate to some sort of a theme that's relatable to people's lives. And then you say, you know, there's 2 ways to ask the relatable question. Where one is which of these laws are relatable to life, and the other is how do I make something that seems of an ancient era relatable to my life. And the third is, well, is there worth in describing the sort of method of setting up the Mishkan on its own merits, just because it's Torah? A lot of people find that boring, I guess.
I was going to ask a question before, and I don't want to forget. Sorry. That I like the fact that there are some hard copies we can look at, but I know there's a lot of stuff online, and so I've looked online, and I just like when you look for medicals information, there are some better sites than others. Can you direct us to the ones that might be?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, I gave you the JTA.
Well, I gave the JTS and
Right.
the AJU and the conservative yeshiva for sure.
Okay.
Do you want the
I
Orthodox
tend-
point of view? Chabad has
So Chabad sometimes.
But
I don't think
Jonathan
Chabad's problem is that they're
Sachs-
Orthodox. I think that a lot of
Yeah,
times
guys,
Chabad's
yeah.
problem is that it's simplistic. But I think that you're a skilled enough reader to sniff out simplistic when you see it.
Lord Jonathan Sachs.
Or
No,
Jonathan
Sachs
Sachs, I don't know if he writes
The truth is,
regularly though.
you know,
Does he?
There's enough.
there's archives.
There's
There's
archives.
archives.
SACKS.
The,
Nice.
Not the same.
spelling. My son has not been mistaken for that.
I think in some ways, you know, beyond those 4 texts, you can, I mean, I use Google to find stuff also, and
I do.
sometimes I'll find something that's some bulletin article from some synagogue in San
Yeah.
Antonio, that like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if it's
That's
a good idea, it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay,
Um,
all right,
so,
thanks.
all right,
I have to go, Mickey.
I think we're gonna stop.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Dr. Paul?
Do you need help carrying
I'll take
that?
care of it. Made it up here, I'll make it back.
A lot of stuff to carry.
Well, here, you can carry it down to the library if you wanna carry some stuff.
You want this carried down?
Sure.
Why wasn't this class or whatever on the